Okay, so this is the grammar review for speaking about our journeys. So if you remember, we've been talking about traveling, we've been talking about the ways that we travel, and we've been using our comparative adjectives or our superlative adjectives so that we could compare what was our journey like with something else. And comparing it by saying maybe this was the best experience ever, or this was the longest trip of my life, or this place was the busiest touristic place, or it was the coldest place, or so really talking about our journeys, but using comparative and superlative adjectives. And also we also did ways of traveling and requesting. When we're traveling, talking about money, because when we're traveling, we need to exchange our money, we need to find an ATM, we need to take out some money. So making sure that we can speak about money when we're traveling, and also that we could request and ask. So we looked at also requesting by using the modal verb can or could, and responding, and then writing about our trip. So we were able to use conjunctions and so to connect our sentence. So that's what we did when we were looking at our journey and the grammar that we were doing. So let's make sure that we can understand the grammar when we speak about our journeys, our trips, places that we have been to, that we went to. Okay, so in the first part, it says to complete these sentences. So Mercury is the nearest planet to the sun. That's using the EST when we add it to an adjective, because we're saying it is the nearest compared to many. Saturn is a big planet, but Jupiter is the biggest planet. So when we say Jupiter is the biggest planet, you can see in this sentence that we're adding the EST to our adjective. And when we add the EST to our adjective, again, because we're comparing it to many. So Jupiter, compared to many other planets, is the biggest planet. Venus is a hot planet, but Mercury is the hottest. So again, this is your superlative adjective. We can see we added the EST to our adjective hot because we're comparing Mercury to many adjectives. So Mercury is the hottest. The journey from Earth to Neptune is longer than Earth to Uranus. So Earth to Neptune is longer. To Neptune is longer. So here we're comparing two objects. So remember, when you compare two nouns, you add the ER, not EST, the ER to your adjectives, because we're comparing two. So this one is the comparative adjectives, and these two are the superlative adjectives. Okay, so making sure we understand the superlative and we understand the comparative. So two different ways that we can compare. Okay, so this is the first one. The superlative. And then we had the comparative. So superlative, you could see we add the EST to the adjective. Comparative, we add the ER to the adjective. Next one, Earth is the best planet. So best comes from the adjective good because we're comparing it. It is the best compared to many. So that's a superlative because we're comparing it to many. And Mars is smaller than Earth, but Mercury is the smallest. So the smallest because compared to many. So you could see the EST, the smallest. Okay, so that's all you needed to remember. So there's two ways that we can compare objects, that we can compare nouns. The first one is called the superlative, and the second one is called the comparative adjectives. So in the superlative, you add the EST, but be careful, there are some adjectives that are irregular. And in the comparative, you add the ER to the adjective because you're comparing two nouns. The superlative, you're comparing one to many. So we know which of the adjectives are superlative and which of them are comparative. So this was our rule. Comparative is if it's a short adjective, you add the ER. And then you put the word then. So ER and then the word then. So this is the comparative. And if you have more, you add the word more to the long adjective. So for example, something is longer than or smaller than something. This was from the first rule here. Okay, so that's how we compare. That's the rules. So I'll just write them again. So, okay, this should be an easy way to understand. So we're comparing nouns. Comparative, if you have a short adjective, that just means that the word is short, like big, strong, tall. So these words are short adjectives. Then you put an ER and the word then. So for example, something is longer than, smaller than. Okay, that's our rule. But for the long adjectives, you put the word more. Something is more beautiful, more amazing, more dangerous. Superlative, if you have a short adjective, you add the EST. Okay, if it's a long adjective, you add most. So, for example, the nearest, biggest, hottest, best, smallest, these are all short adjectives. These were just some examples. So you could see that EST. And if you had a long adjective, remember like words like beautiful, amazing, dangerous, you say the most. This was the most dangerous trip. This was the most beautiful trip because you're comparing it to many. So in the superlative, you're comparing one object or one thing with many, but comparative, you're comparing two. Okay, so let's have a look. We have Qatar is hotter than. So that's your comparative with the ER, is hotter than Berlin. Or you could say Berlin is colder than Qatar. So you could see we are comparing two things. One is Qatar and the other is Berlin. So that comes from the first one, the comparative. Okay, and you could see, yeah, you just add the ER and the word then. So hotter, hotter than. We had a Porsche can travel at 300 kilometers per hour. A Mini can travel at 225. So you could say a Porsche is faster than a Mini. Or you could say a Mini is slower than a Porsche. So again, this is called the comparative adjectives because we're comparing two things. This house costs $1 million. The apartment costs $250,000. So this house is more expensive. That's a long adjective, more expensive than an apartment. Or you could say the apartment is cheaper than a house. Next one, London is bigger than Madrid. Or you could say Madrid is smaller than London. So again, adding the ER to our adjective and then the word then, because we're comparing two things. Maybe you're comparing two countries, two objects, two people, anything that's an object, a noun. The River Nile is shorter than the Amazon River. Or you could say the Amazon River is longer than the River Nile. Okay, so again, this was the comparative. We can see the ER. Okay, so this is some sentences with the comparative adjectives. Now we have the superlative adjectives. So, for example, London is the coldest city. So I can see that I add an EST in the superlative. It is the coldest city. Okay, so coldest city. A Bugatti can travel at 430 kilometers. It's the fastest car in the world. The fastest car, because I'm comparing it to many or saying in the whole world. So in the superlative, we add the EST to the adjective, to the short adjective. Number 3, this castle costs $10 million. It's the most expensive home. Number 4, Delhi has a population of 18.9 million. So we can say it's the biggest capital city because we're comparing it to in the whole of India. It's the biggest. The Mississippi River is 3,733. It's the shortest river. So again, with the superlative, we are adding the EST to the short adjective, or to the long adjective, you add the word most before the adjective. So now we can use comparative and superlative adjectives. So for number 5, we can make sentences we can look at some adjectives and talk about the opposite word. So if something is cheap, the opposite would be expensive. Okay, so these are opposite words for the adjectives. If something is dirty, clean. Now, also another word for dirty is unclean. Yep. So the opposite of that would be clean. And if something is cold, hot. So cold and hot. If something is easy, difficult, or we also say hard, difficult, hard, they're the same. If something is fast, slow. If something is tall or long, short. Yeah. And if something is safe, the opposite word is dangerous. And if something is tiny, the opposite word is big, or you could say huge. Okay, so let's have a look at some sentences. We could say Adelaide is a safe city. Okay, that's just talking about one object or one noun. So the adjective safe, I'm not comparing it. I'm just saying Adelaide because we only got one object, which is Adelaide. But have a look at the word safe in the next sentence. Adelaide is safer than Melbourne. So now I'm comparing Adelaide to another city, Melbourne. So I must put the ER to the adjective and add the word then. That's in the comparative. In the superlative, a sentence would be Adelaide is the safest city in Australia. So this is a really good example of the comparative and then the superlative. So Sydney is the most expensive city. That would be your superlative. So, because I could say Sydney is an expensive city, but that's not comparing it. But then it's the most expensive city in Australia because I'm comparing it to many. If I want to compare it to another city, so Sydney is more expensive than, let's go Adelaide, is more expensive than Adelaide. So again, you could see that this is the comparative, okay, because we're comparing two objects. And this is the superlative. So you could see this is just the one object. This has two objects. And in the superlative, we're comparing it to many. Okay, so same information. Like Sydney is an expensive city. Sydney is more expensive than Adelaide. Sydney is the most expensive city in Australia. Okay, so you really have to make sure you could see the superlative and the comparative in all these sentences. Another example is fresh water is the best drink. That's a superlative. Canada is the coldest country. Superlative. San Andreas is the hottest island. We're comparing it to many. The Yellow River is the most famous river in China. Moscow in Russia is the most expensive city in the world. Brazil has better beaches than Australia. Comparative, because I'm comparing two countries. Brazil, and Australia. Argentina is poorer than Australia. Comparative. MacBook are more expensive than Dell. Comparative. iPhones are more technologically advanced than Samsung. Comparative, because I'm comparing one phone to another phone. Eggs in Australia are more expensive than in Ecuador. Rio is hotter than Adelaide. So make sure you could see the comparative, the ER that we add to the short adjective. Canada is colder than Australia. Okay, then we talked about, so that's using everyday adjectives. We made some sentences using everyday adjectives. So that's how you could see we're always, you could tell someone what you think of your city because you're comparing it to another city. So you need to know how to use a comparative adjective or maybe a superlative adjective. So you could always find yourself speaking about your place, about a restaurant. Maybe you're comparing a restaurant to another restaurant, or you're comparing your trip to your last trip, or your bus ride to the last bus ride, or your last flight compared to your last flight. Okay, so now we are going to talk about ways of traveling in number 7. So ways of traveling. So you remember we say, when we speak about how did we go somewhere, how did we get somewhere, we say we went by bus. So I took a bus or by bus. So I often go by bus to work. So by bus to work. So by bus. It's sunny today, so let's walk, or you could say let's go through the park. So I'll just give you another way how to say that. You could say let's walk. That's fine. Let's walk or let's go through. Okay, so these are ways of traveling. Number 3, sometimes I drive to the shops and sometimes I take the bus. So we can say that we take the bus or that we catch the bus. Did you travel? So as a question, I can ask someone, did you travel to Beijing by plane? So I think really they should have made this as the answer because we're talking about ways of traveling. So to a place, we always use the preposition to when we say, I went to the markets, I went to the dentist, I went to the doctor, I went to a city. But then how did you get there? The way that you traveled? By plane. So you could see by bus, by plane. Okay, so now you know how to talk about ways of traveling. How did you go from one place to another place? That's what it means, ways of traveling. We say by foot. If you went walking, we say by foot, by plane, by bus. You could say by Uber, by a taxi, take a taxi. Okay, let's talk about money. So we know that when we travel, when we go on our journeys, we need to talk about money. Okay, because we're on a trip, you'll need to change money or do something with your money. So, can I pay by credit card? Yeah, so we pay by credit card. Can you lend me? Or you could say, can you give me? But that doesn't sound, it's more polite to say, can you lend me 10 euros? Because we're in Australia, let's practice by saying $10. So that means that you are asking someone because you want to take money from them, like, can you give me? But then you're going to give it back to them because you're borrowing, it's lending. So remember, can you lend me $10? Could I change? Yep. So could I change? Now you can also say exchange. That's another word. So could I change or exchange 100 pounds to dollars? So 100 pounds to dollars. And we need to take out some money from an ATM. So when you have a machine, you take out some money from an ATM. And that's how we say ATM. You can say an ATM machine or just ATM. I need an ATM. Where is the closest ATM? So that's how we say it, ATM. Okay, let's match, imagine a conversation. So in number 9, can you lend $1? Can you lend me $1? Could I borrow €1? Could you pay by cash? Good. Can we have some lunch? Could I use your pen? Okay, in number 10, we're just going to look at a short conversation talking about money, requesting. So this is a conversation, a short conversation, requesting. Remember, requesting means asking. So conversation with requesting. We know how to ask for something. So here's an example of a conversation where we're asking. So, hey mate, I missed the bus. Can you lend me your motorcycle? Yes, of course. Or you could respond by saying, yes, sure. Can I also borrow your helmet also? Of course. This is another conversation. Hi, Andres and Min. How are you guys? Hi, bro. Hey. Oh, Jose, can I borrow some money? Or you could say, could. Could I borrow some money? No, I don't have any at all. You do. I saw some money in your hands. Come on, man. Lend me $1,000. What money? You are crazy, bro. So this should be you. What money? You are crazy, bro. So you could see that this friend didn't want to help his other friends. Here's another conversation. Hi, Silvio. How are you? I'm fine. How about you? Not bad. I've come to ask you for a favor. Sure. What do you need? I'm broke. I need some money. Can you lend me a little? Yes, sure. How much? I need $100. Okay, here you go. Cheers, which means thanks. Yeah, cheers. So it's another word. It's very casual and it's like, it's nice. It's like saying thanks, cheers. You could say cheers, but you cannot say so much. You can only say thanks so much or just cheers. So that's a good way to show someone you're saying thanks. It's very casual. We use it a lot in, especially when someone does something nice for you. You say cheers, thank you. Okay, here's another conversation. Hello, Jessica. How are you? I'm fine. How are you? I'm okay. Can you lend me your phone? Yes, sure. Thanks. Hey, bro, what's up? Could I use your car for the day? No way. I need my car today. Sorry. Okay, thanks anyways. So I like this conversation because sometimes when someone gives you a negative, they say, no, sorry. We say, sorry, I can't help you. But then I like this expression, okay, thanks anyways. That means like, okay, no worries. Thank you for trying. So even though you didn't get a positive response because you asked someone for something, you always say to them, no worries, thank you anyways. That's a very, very common expression. And that's all we had. Okay, so we talked about, let's go back and recap. We were looking at journeys and traveling and going to places, but we want to compare our trips. So remember, superlative adjectives, we know what to do to the adjective, and comparative adjective, we know what to do with the adjective, and we know why we use one of them and why we use the other one. So make sure you understand that. We looked at some sentences in the comparative adjectives. We then looked at some sentences using the superlative adjectives. We looked at some opposite words. We looked at using everyday adjectives in our everyday life, making, talking about our city, comparing it to another in both the comparative and the superlative. We then talked about ways of traveling. How do we move from one place to another? So usually try to use that preposition by bus, by car, by plane. Or if you walk through the park, or you go through the park, or you take the bus, or you catch the bus. And then we talked about money, because when we're traveling, you might need to pay by credit card. You want to ask, can I pay with my credit card? Maybe you need to borrow money, or you're asking your friend, can you lend me some money? Or maybe you need to exchange or change some money at the ATM machine. Then we looked at just a conversation with the money and conversations with requesting. Remember, requesting means I'm asking for something. Because when you're traveling, you might need to ask, can you tell me where the bus station is? Or can you tell me where the train station is? Or can you, whatever you need to ask when you're traveling. Okay, so that's all that we had. Review, recap for the unit that we did. Okay, so unit 7, it was all about journeys and traveling and your adjectives. Make sure you know how to compare. Use your adjective to compare one place to another place, or just talk about your city, your place, where you're from, your favorite trip, your favorite holiday. Okay, so that's all we did. Let's go on a break. So we'll finish here.